They say a man's home is his castle, but a widow's home is her sanctuary. When I found my daughter-in-law, wearing my silk robe and drinking my vintage wine, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I smiled. Because I knew something she didn't. This house wasn't just a building. It was a ticking time bomb. And I was about to light the fuse. Oh. Hello, ladies. Mary here. Let's talk about the concept of sanctuary. For a woman of a certain age, her home isn't just a pile of bricks and mortgage payments. It is a museum of her life. It is the place where she raised her babies, where she nursed her husband through his final days, and where she finally got the white carpet she always wanted, because there were no longer muddy soccer cleats running through the hallway. But what happens when you turn your key in the lock and realize that your sanctuary has been breached? I'm not talking about burglars. Burglars are honest criminals. They take your TV and leave. I'm talking about the worst kind of invader, the one who calls you mom while dismantling your life. My name is Veronica. I am 64 years old, and for 30 years, I worked as a forensic accountant. My job was to look at a mess of numbers and find the lie hidden inside them. I see patterns, I see discrepancies. And when I pulled into the driveway of my 4-bedroom colonial in Scarsdale at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, I saw a discrepancy that made my blood run cold. There were 3 cars in my driveway. I had been away for 10 days at a silent retreat in the Catskills. My husband Robert passed away 2 years ago, and my therapist suggested I needed quiet reflection. I hated every minute of it. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud. So I packed my bags 2 days early and drove home, desperate for the comfort of my own Egyptian cotton sheets and the smell of my lavender diffusers. But as my headlights swept across the front of my house, I didn't see a dark sleeping home. I saw a carnival. Every light on the first floor was blazing. The sheer curtains in the living room were pulsing with the blue light of a massive television screen. And parked right behind my pristine E-Class Mercedes was a rusted pickup truck with a bumper sticker that read "Locally Hated." I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My son Leo had a key. He was supposed to check the mail and water the peace lilies. He was not supposed to host a monster truck rally. I got out of the car. The night air was cool, but as I walked up the slate path, I smelled it. Not lavender, not the crisp scent of autumn leaves. I smelled strawberry vape smoke and, was that deep fryer grease? I put my key in the lock. It turned, but the door didn't budge. The safety chain was on. I rang the doorbell once, twice. Then I pounded on the wood with the flat of my hand. Leo the first shouted, "Open this door." Inside, the music. Some thumping bass-heavy noise that sounded like a migraine set to a beat, abruptly cut off. I heard scurrying, I heard a crash like glass breaking, then whispers. Finally, the door cracked open. It wasn't Leo, it was Jade. My daughter-in-law is 29 years old. She describes herself as a lifestyle curator, which, as far as I can tell, means she takes photos of coffee cups and posts them on the internet for strangers to validate. She was wearing a silk robe, my silk robe, the vintage kimono I bought in Kyoto in 1995. "Veronica," she squeaked. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. You're not supposed to be back until Thursday." "Open the door, Jade," I said. My voice was low. It was the voice I used when I had to tell a CEO he was going to federal prison for embezzlement. She fumbled with the chain. The door swung open, and the smell hit me like a physical blow. It was a mixture of stale beer, cheap perfume, and something that smelled suspiciously like wet dog. I stepped into my foyer. I stopped dead. My foyer table, an antique mahogany piece that had been in Robert's family for 3 generations, was gone. In its place was a ring light on a tripod, and a stack of cardboard boxes labeled Jade's Jungle merch. "Where is my table?" I asked. I didn't shout. I was too shocked to shout. "Oh, that old thing." Jade gave a nervous, high-pitched laugh, pulling my kimono tighter around herself. "We moved it to the garage. It was messing with the feng shui of the entryway. I needed better lighting for my unboxing videos." "You moved it to the garage?" I repeated. "The garage is uninsulated, Jade. That table is 200 years old." "Relax, Veronica. It's just furniture." "Leo said you wouldn't mind." Leo the First yelled again, marching past her into the living room. If the foyer was bad, the living room was a crime scene. My white carpet, my beautiful pristine white wool carpet, was covered in what looked like a dozen sleeping bags. There were people everywhere. I recognized Jade's mother, a woman named Sheila, who wore too much turquoise jewelry and believed in crystals more than she believed in employment. She was asleep on my Chesterfield sofa, her mouth open, snoring loudly. There was a man I didn't know, playing video games on my television. A large drooling bulldog was chewing on the leg of my coffee table. And there was Leo, my son, my 32-year-old boy, who had an MBA but apparently no spine. He was coming out of the kitchen, holding a bag of frozen pizza rolls. "Mom," he dropped the bag. It hit the floor with a frozen thud. "You're back early." "Explain," I said. I pointed a trembling finger at the sleeping woman, the bulldog, and the ring light. "Explain why there is a petting zoo and a refugee camp in my living room." Leo looked at Jade, then back at me. He put on his negotiating face, the one he used when he wanted money. "Mom, don't be dramatic. Jade's lease was up at her studio apartment, and we're between places right now. We figured since you were away at the retreat, we'd crash here for a few days, just until we sort things out." "Crash here?" I looked at the boxes stacked against the wall. They weren't overnight bags, they were moving boxes, kitchen appliances, winter coats, a cat tree. Leo the First said, my forensic brain clicking into gear. "Those are U-Haul boxes. That isn't crashing. That is moving in." Jade stepped up beside him, slipping her arm through his. She had recovered her composure. She tossed her hair, flipping the collar of my kimono. "Technically, Veronica, we're doing you a favor," she said. Her voice had that condescending sweetness that makes you want to commit a felony. "This house is way too big for one lonely old woman. It's depressing. We're bringing some life into it. Plus, my followers love the aesthetic of the crown molding. It's great for my brand." "Your brand?" I felt a vein throb in my temple. "You are wearing my clothes. You moved my furniture. You brought a dog into a house that has never seen an animal larger than a hamster." "Buster is an emotional support animal," Jade snapped. "He has anxiety." "I have anxiety," I shouted, "right now. Get out. All of you. Pack your boxes, wake up your mother, and get out of my house." The room went silent. The man playing video games paused his game. Sheila snorted in her sleep and rolled over. Leo sighed. It was a long, patronizing sigh. He walked over to me and put his hands on my shoulders. "Mom," he said gently, "you're tired. You've been at that retreat, probably eating tofu and crying about Dad. You're not thinking clearly." "I am thinking perfectly clearly." "No, you're not," Jade interjected. "You're hysterical. Look at you, you're shaking. This is exactly why we needed to be here. Leo told me you've been slipping lately." I froze. "Slipping? Forgetting things," Jade said. She walked over to the mantel, my mantel, where my collection of antique crystal figurines used to sit. They were gone, replaced by a row of succulents and a neon sign that said Vibes. "Where are my crystals?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "See." Jade looked at Leo with a triumphant, sad face. "She doesn't remember." "Veronica, you told us to pack them away. You said they were gathering dust and making you sad. You told us last week to redecorate." I stared at her. I stared at my son. He looked down at his shoes. I did no such thing, I said. Mom, Leo said softly. You did. On the phone. You sounded really confused. That's why we came. To help you transition. Transition to what? To a simpler life, Jade smiled. It was a shark smile. We're going to take care of everything. You don't have to worry about this big dusty house anymore. We're here now. I looked around the room. I looked at the strange man, the dog, the boxes, the missing furniture. And I realized something terrifying. They hadn't just moved in. They were digging in. And they were using the oldest trick in the book. Gaslighting the widow. I took a deep breath. I could scream. I could call the police. But the police would see a son and a daughter-in-law, caring for an elderly mother. They would see a civil dispute. They wouldn't see the invasion. My accountant brain took over. Emotion is the liability. Facts are assets. And right now I was outnumbered and outflanked. I needed to regroup. I let my shoulders slump. I let my face crumble. I said that. Yes, Mom. Leo said, looking relieved that I was buying it. I must be. More tired than I thought, I murmured. Exactly, Jade said, patting my arm. Why don't you go upstairs? We put your things in the guest room. The guest room. I snapped my head up. My bedroom is the master suite. Oh, we took the master, Jade said casually. Buster needs the space for his crate, and the lighting is better for my morning routine. You'll be cozier in the guest room. Less space to manage. They had taken my bed. My marital bed. The rage that flared in my chest was hot enough to melt steel. But I swallowed it. I pushed it down deep into the cold, dark place where I used to store the files of men who stole from pension funds. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I'll go to the guest room. Good, Leo said. We'll order some more pizza. Welcome home, Mom. I walked up the stairs. The photos in the hallway, pictures of Robert and me in Paris, in Rome on our wedding day, were gone. The hooks were empty. I walked into the guest room. It was small. It smelled of dust. My suitcases from the closet were piled on the bed. I closed the door. I locked it. I didn't cry. I didn't unpack. I walked to the window and looked down at the driveway. I saw the rusted truck. I saw the lights blazing in my living room. I heard the bass start up again. They thought I was confused. They thought I was weak. They thought they had just conquered a senile old woman. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I checked the deed status on the county clerk's website. Transition, I whispered to the empty room. You want a transition, Jade? I'll give you a transition. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and began to plan. I sat on the lumpy mattress of the guest bed, listening to the thumping bass vibrating through the floorboards. The guest room, I realized with a fresh surge of nausea, wasn't just a bedroom anymore. It was a warehouse. Stacked against the wall were crates of cheap cosmetics and polyester athleisure wear, all branded with Jade's ridiculous logo. My house wasn't just a crash pad. It was a fulfillment center for a failing influencer business. I needed water. My throat felt like I'd swallowed a handful of desert sand. But more importantly, I needed my safe. My husband Robert was a paranoid man. God rest his soul. He didn't trust banks with everything. So he had installed a wall safe behind a false electrical panel in the master closet. It contained the deed to the house, our passports, my birth certificate, and my grandmother's diamond engagement ring, the one I had explicitly told Leo he could not give to Jade, because she would probably pawn it for Botox. If Jade had taken the master bedroom, she had access to the closet. I slipped off my shoes. I opened the guest room door. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by the strobe light effect coming from the living room downstairs. I crept toward the master suite. My heart was hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of a hunt. I hadn't felt this alive since I audited Enron. The door to the master bedroom was ajar. I pushed it open with one finger. The smell of stale incense and dog rolled out. My stomach turned. My beautiful sanctuary with its cream duvet and minimalist aesthetic looked like a frat house. Clothes were strewn everywhere. There were empty wine bottles on my nightstand. And in the center of the room, inside a massive wire crate, was the bulldog, snoring like a chainsaw. But I didn't care about the mess. I cared about the wall. I tiptoed into the closet. Jade had pushed my designer coats to the back, crushing them to make room for her fast fashion garbage. I pushed aside a rack of sequined crop tops and found the panel. It was untouched. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Jade was greedy, but she wasn't thorough. She saw a closet and saw storage. She didn't look for the secrets. I punched in the code. The lock clicked. I grabbed the heavy envelope containing the deed and the legal documents. I found the velvet pouch with the jewelry. I shoved them deep into my oversized tote bag. Then, I heard voices coming from the ensuite bathroom. "It's going to take too long, Leo." It was Jade. Her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp, impatient. "Babe, keep your voice down," Leo whispered. The shower was running, masking their conversation, but the acoustics in the bathroom amplified everything. "If you stood in the closet." "She's clearly losing it," Jade hissed. "Did you see her face? She actually believed she gave us permission. It's perfect. We need to call that doctor your friend knows, the one who signs the competency papers." My blood froze. "I don't know, Jade." Leo sounded weak, hesitant. "Putting her under a conservatorship? That's extreme. She's just stressed. She's senile, Leo. And she's sitting on a $2 million asset that she's letting rot. Think about the brand. Think about the baby. Baby. If we get power of attorney," Jade continued, "we can take a loan out against the equity next week. We can finally launch the skincare line. But we have to act fast before she snaps out of it or talks to her lawyer." "Okay," Leo sighed. "Okay. I'll call Dr. Evans on Monday." I stood in the dark closet, clutching my tote bag. The betrayal didn't hurt. It seared. My son wasn't just lazy. He was conspiring to erase me. He was going to let this woman declare me incompetent, so they could mortgage my home to fund a skincare line that would undoubtedly cause chemical burns. I had heard enough. I backed out of the closet. I backed out of the room. The bulldog lifted his head, let out a wet snort, and went back to sleep. Even the dog knew I wasn't a threat. I went back to the guest room, grabbed my suitcase, and walked down the back stairs that led to the kitchen. I avoided the living room circus. I slipped out the side door into the cool night air. My car was blocked in by the rusty truck. "Fine," I whispered. "Keep the driveway." I walked down the long winding driveway to the street. I called an Uber. While I waited in the dark, watching the lights of my hijacked home flicker through the trees, I made a reservation at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains. I wasn't running away. I was establishing a base of operations. Jade wanted a war. She wanted to play who's the crazy one. Fine. I would give her a performance that would make Meryl Streep look like an amateur. The Uber arrived. I climbed in. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The Ritz," I said, and then, "To hell." There is a specific kind of clarity that comes with a $500 room service breakfast. I sat in my suite at the Ritz-Carlton, sipping an espresso that didn't taste like deep fryer grease, and looked at the dossier I had compiled overnight. It's amazing what you can find on the internet when you know where to look. Jade's skincare line was actually a pyramid scheme. She was trying to pivot into a private label brand. She had maxed out 3 credit cards. Leo was listed as a co-founder on her website, which meant his credit was likely in ruins too. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate. And desperate people are the easiest to manipulate. I checked out of the hotel at 9 a.m. I left my suitcase with the concierge. I wasn't risking my cashmere around that bulldog again, and drove back to the war zone. When I walked through the front door of my house, the silence was heavy and smelling of stale beer. The party debris was impressive. Red plastic cups littered my foyer. A slice of pepperoni pizza was face down on my Persian rug. They didn't even know I had left. They thought I had been asleep in the guest room all night. That's how much they cared about my safety. I decided to wake them up. I went to the kitchen, grabbed 2 metal pot lids, and marched into the living room, where Sheila and the strange man were still passed out on the sofas. Clang, clang, clang. Good morning, sunshine, I shouted, banging the lids together like a deranged symbolist. Sheila shrieked and rolled off the couch. The bulldog started barking. From upstairs, I heard a thud and then footsteps. Leo came running down the stairs in his boxers, looking terrified. Jade followed, wearing an eye mask pushed up on her forehead. Mom, Leo panted, what is happening? Is there a fire? I dropped the lids on the floor. I let my eyes go wide and frantic. I started picking up red cups with shaking hands, crushing them. The inspection, I yelled. The inspectors are coming. We have to clean. They'll take the house if it's dirty. They'll take it. I was improvising, channeling a client I once had, who tried to plead insanity during a tax audit. Jade came down the stairs, looking annoyed but calculating. She exchanged a look with Leo. See, that look said, she's lost it. Veronica, Jade said, using her talking to a toddler voice. There are no inspectors. You're confused again. No, I paced in circles. The men with the clipboards. I saw them in the window. They said the feng shui was wrong. I grabbed the neon vibe sign from the mantel and threw it into the trash can. Bad vibes, bad. Hey, Jade shouted, rushing forward. That cost $200. Mom, stop. Leo grabbed my arms. Calm down. You're having an episode. I went limp in his arms. I looked up at him, letting tears well in my eyes. An episode? Is that what this is? Leo, why can't I remember the inspectors? Because they aren't real, Mom. Leo said, guiding me to a chair. One of the few that didn't have a sleeping stranger on it. Jade signaled for her mother and the boyfriend to leave the room. They scuttled away into the kitchen to raid my fridge, presumably. Jade sat on the coffee table in front of me. She took my hands. Her palms were clammy. Veronica, she said softly, we need to talk. We didn't want to upset you last night, but we've been worried for months. Do you remember calling me last week and screaming that the CIA was stealing your mail? I stared at her. I had never done that. I hadn't called Jade in 3 months. I don't, I whispered. See? Jade looked at Leo. It's progressing faster than we thought. And the permission, Leo added, his voice thick with guilt but pushing through it. You told us to move in, Mom. You begged us. You said you were scared to be alone because of the voices. The voices, I asked. Yes, Jade nodded solemnly. You said the house was talking to you, telling you to burn it down. That was a nice touch. They were setting the stage to claim I was a danger to myself and the property. I feel so foggy, I murmured, rubbing my temples. I thought I was just tired. It's more than tired, Veronica, Jade said. We spoke to a specialist, a friend of the family, Dr. Evans. He thinks it might be early onset cognitive decline, aggressive, dementia. I choked out the word. We don't like labels, Jade said, but yes. That's why we're here. To take the burden off you. I looked at my son. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at the pizza stain on the rug. So what do we do? I asked, making my voice small and trembling. I don't want to go to a home, Leo. Please don't put me in a home. This was the pivot point. If they thought I was fighting them, they would fight back hard. If they thought I was submissive, they would get sloppy. We don't want that either, Leo lied. We want to keep you here, but the house is dangerous for you, Jade interrupted. The stairs, the gas stove, the upkeep. It's too much stress. Stress makes the condition worse. She squeezed my hands. We have a solution though, we stay. We take over the management of the estate. We handle the bills, the repairs, the decisions. You just rest. You stay in the guest room, and we'll hire a nice nurse to come sit with you during the day, so you don't, see the inspectors again. A nurse. They wanted to hire a jailer. But the house. I looked around. It needs so much work. I don't have the money to fix it up for a young family. We know, Jade said quickly. Too quickly. That's why we were thinking. If you sign the deed over to Leo now, we could use our own credit to finance the renovations. We want to make this place perfect. For us, and for you, of course. Your own credit, I asked. I knew for a fact their credit score was lower than the temperature outside. We have investors, Jade said vaguely. For the brand, we can pool the resources. But we can't invest in a property we don't own. You understand that, right? It's just business. I looked at her. She was practically drooling at the thought of the equity. I hesitated. I need to think, my head hurts. Take your time, Jade said, standing up. But Dr. Evans is coming tomorrow to do an evaluation, just to make sure you're comfortable. They were bringing the doctor tomorrow. They were moving fast. Okay, I said. I'll go lie down. I think I need to rest. Good idea, Leo said. We'll clean up this mess. Don't worry about a thing. I walked back upstairs to the guest room. I closed the door. They wanted to play doctor. Fine. I pulled my phone out. I had a call to make. Not to a doctor, but to a man named Sledge. He wasn't a criminal. Well, not technically. He was the president of the Iron Vipers Motorcycle Club. I had done their taxes 3 years ago, when the IRS tried to shut down their auto body shop. I had saved them $200,000 and kept Sledge out of prison. He owed me a favor, a big one, and I had a feeling he was looking for a new clubhouse. I locked myself in the guest bathroom and turned on the faucet. The rushing water was a precaution. Jade had ears like a bat for drama, as she liked to tell her followers, and I didn't put it past her to be listening at the door. I dialed the number from memory. It rang 4 times before a voice that sounded like gravel in a blender answered. Viper Auto, we're closed. Sledge, I said, keeping my voice low. It's Veronica, the woman who saved your shop from the IRS audit of 2019. There was a pause. Then the tone shifted from hostile to respectful. The accountant, damn. Haven't heard from you since you told me. I couldn't write off my Harley as a medical device. What do you need? I need to liquidate a distressed asset, I said. Quietly, quickly. Cash. What kind of asset? My house, Scarsdale. 4 bedrooms, finished basement, 3-car garage, secluded lot. Sledge whistled. That's a fancy neighborhood for us, Veronica. The neighbors are gonna hate us. That, I said, a cold smile touching my lips, is the selling point. I'll give it to you for 50 cents on the dollar, Sledge. But you have to be ready to move in on Saturday. And I mean move in, all the boys. Saturday, that's 4 days away. Is the place empty? It will be occupiable, I said carefully. But there is a squatter situation, family. They need to be encouraged to leave. Sledge laughed. It was a dark rumbling sound. We're good at encouragement. You serious about the price? Dead serious. I'll have the papers drawn up. Meet me at the diner on 4th Street on Thursday night. Bring a briefcase. Done. I hung up and flushed the toilet. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive the baiting. The next morning, Dr. Evans arrived. I knew he was a fraud the moment I saw his shoes. They were Gucci loafers, scuffed at the toe, worn without socks. No self-respecting geriatric specialist wears loafers without socks to a house call. He looked less like a doctor and more like a club promoter who had found a stethoscope at a costume shop. Jade ushered him into the living room, where she had cleared away the pizza boxes, but left the ring light up. "Veronica," Jade cooed. "This is Dr. Evans. He's just going to ask you a few questions." "Please call me Chaz," the doctor said, flashing a blindingly white smile. "Chaz," I repeated. "What medical school did you attend, Chaz?" "He studied in the Caribbean," Leo interjected quickly. "Top tier." "Right," Chaz said, clicking a pen. "So, Veronica, Jade tells me you've been seeing things, inspectors, men in suits." I sat on the edge of the sofa, wringing my hands. I needed to sell this. I needed them to believe I was completely gone, so they would sign the papers I was about to present to them. "They were in the window," I whispered, looking dartingly at the drapes. "They said my crystals were bad vibes." Jade poked Leo in the ribs. "See? Interesting." Chaz scribbled something on a notepad that looked suspiciously like a grocery list. "And do you know what year it is?" 1998, I guessed. Leo flinched. "Mom, it's 2024. Oh, I looked down. Time moves so fast when the house is talking to you. Chaz nodded sagely. "Classic symptoms: disorientation, hallucinations, paranoia. In my professional opinion, she is not fit to manage her own affairs. She needs a guardian." "A guardian," Jade repeated, tasting the word like it was caviar. "Like us." "Ideally family," Chaz said. "Someone who can manage the assets and ensure she stays calm." He pulled a document from his bag. It wasn't a medical chart. It was a pre-printed competency evaluation. He signed it with a flourish. "There," Chaz said. "Legally, this supports your petition for power of attorney." Jade snatched the paper. She looked at it, then at me. Her eyes were predatory. "Well, Veronica," she said, "it looks like we have no choice. We have to take over. For your safety." I let out a shaky breath. If the doctor says so." "He does," Leo said, avoiding my gaze. "It's for the best, Mom." "Okay," I said, "but if you're going to take over, you need to fix the house. The voices say the walls are ugly. They hate the beige." Jade's eyes lit up. "We were thinking of painting everything white and ripping up these carpets. Hardwood everywhere." "Yes," I said, "do it. Make it yours. If I'm just going to be a guest, I want you to be happy." "We will," Jade grinned. "We're going to start renovations immediately. Like today. I have a contractor coming to quote the demo." "Demo?" I asked. "We're knocking down the wall between the kitchen and the dining room," Jade announced. "Open concept. It'll increase the value by 50 grand. "Excellent," I said. "Use your money though, my accounts are. I don't remember the passwords." "We'll figure that out later," Jade waved a hand. "We have the credit cards. We'll just put it on those and pay it off once we refinance." She meant once they mortgaged my house. "I'm going to go nap," I said, standing up. "Chaz." "Thank you." "Anytime, babe," Chaz winked. I walked upstairs. As I reached the landing, I heard Jade squeal. "We got it. We actually got it." "Leo, call the contractor. I want this carpet gone by Friday. I want to film the demo for a reel." New house, new me. I went into the guest room and closed the door. They were going to spend their own money, what little they had, destroying a house that wouldn't belong to them in 4 days. They were going to pour their liquidity into a property I was selling to a biker gang for cash. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Sledge. "Deal is green. Bring the cash Thursday. Move in Saturday. Warning: the floors might be missing." There is a distinct sound that a sledgehammer makes when it hits 40-year-old plaster. It is a wet, crumbling thud, followed by the cascade of dust. On Wednesday morning, I woke up to that sound. It was 7 a.m. Most people would be horrified to wake up to the sound of their home being destroyed. I lay in the lumpy guest bed and smiled. Every swing of that hammer was a dollar bill leaving my son's bank account. I went downstairs in my robe. The house looked like a war zone. The beautiful French doors separating the dining room from the kitchen were gone. In their place was a jagged hole, framed by exposed studs and hanging wires. Dust covered everything: the chandelier, the windows, the floors. Jade was standing in the middle of the rubble, holding her phone on a gimbal. She was wearing pristine white overalls that were entirely inappropriate for construction, and a pink hard hat that I suspected she had bought at a party supply store. "Hey guys," she chirped into the camera. "Day 1 of the reno. We are literally opening up this space to let the energy flow. It's going to be massive. Say hi, Leo." Leo was standing by the wall looking pale. He was holding a crowbar and looking at a quote on his iPad. He looked like he was about to vomit. "It's going to be great," he stammered. I walked into the frame. Jade gasped and lowered the phone. "Veronica, you're awake. Mind the dust. It's bad for your lungs." "What is happening?" I asked, feigning my best confused widow act. "Why is there a hole in my wall?" "It's the open concept, Mom," Leo said, stepping over a pile of drywall. "Remember, we talked about this. We're making it better for you." "Better?" I touched a jagged piece of wood. "It looks expensive." "It is," Leo whispered, rubbing his forehead. "The contractor wanted 10 grand up front for materials. We had to put it on the emergency card." "But it's an investment," Jade cut in, glaring at him. "Once the kitchen is marble, the equity will double. We'll refinance next month and pay everything off." "Marble?" She wanted marble. "You know," I said softly, staring at the destruction, "if you're going to do it, you should do it right. Robert always wanted Italian marble. Calacatta gold." Jade's eyes widened. "Calacatta gold, that's like really expensive." "It's the best," I said dreamily. "The voices, they like the gold. They say if you get the cheap stuff, the house will be angry." Jade looked at Leo. "See, even she knows. We can't cheap out, Leo. If we're going to be the guardians of the estate, we need to honor the vibe. Call the stone guy. Upgrade the order." Leo looked like he was going to cry. "Jade, that's another $15,000. We'll be maxed out." "Do it," she hissed. "We get the deed in 2 weeks. It's free money." I watched Leo make the call. I watched him authorize a $15,000 charge on a credit card that probably had an interest rate of 28%. "Excellent," I said. "Now I have some news." They both looked at me wary. "I've been thinking about what Chaz said about the transition." "Yeah." Jade stepped closer, her eyes hungry. "I think you're right. This noise, the dust, it's too much for my head." I made some calls. I found a place. The Meadows. It's an assisted living facility in Vermont. "Vermont?" Leo asked. "That's far." "It's quiet," I said. "They have bingo and Jell-O. I think I should go soon." "How soon?" Jade asked, trying to hide her excitement. "Saturday," I said. The silence was electric. "Saturday," Jade squealed. "This Saturday? Like in 3 days?" "Yes. I'll pack my things. You two can have the house to yourselves. You can finish the renovations without me wandering around." Jade practically vibrated. She grabbed Leo's arm. "Babe, did you hear that? Saturday. We can host the launch party on Saturday night. The house will be ours." "Saturday is fast," Leo said, looking at me with a flicker of guilt. "Mom, are you sure?" "I'm sure," Leo the first said, patting his cheek. "I just want peace. And I want you to have the house. You deserve it." "We'll help you pack," Jade said. We can get a dumpster for all the old stuff you don't need. We'll purge everything. Yes, I said. A dumpster. That's a wonderful idea. I spent the rest of the day packing. In reality, I was smuggling. I moved my jewelry, my forensic accounting files, and my small collection of gold coins into the trunk of my car, hiding them under piles of donations for goodwill. I let Jade throw away my old curtains. I let her toss my pots and pans into a skip in the driveway. Every item she threw away was an item I didn't have to move. She was literally cleaning the house for the new owner. By Thursday evening, the house was unrecognizable. The floors were stripped to the subfloor. The kitchen cabinets were ripped out. The walls were half painted in a color Jade called cloud, but looked like primer. It was a shell. A gutted, dusty, expensive shell. I'm going to dinner, I told them Thursday night. I want one last meal at the diner before I go to the facility. Have fun, Jade yelled from the top of a ladder. She didn't even look down. I drove to the diner on 4th Street. I sat in a booth in the back. At 8 p.m., a man the size of a vending machine walked in. He was wearing a leather vest that creaked when he moved. He had a beard that reached his chest and tattoos that went up his neck. Sledge. He slid into the booth opposite me. The table groaned. Veronica, he grunted. Sledge, I smiled. Did you bring the briefcase? Sledge didn't say a word at first. He just placed a heavy, battered leather briefcase on the Formica table. It landed with a thud that rattled the silverware. He signaled the waitress for coffee black, and then looked at me with eyes that had seen things most accountants only read about in police reports. You sure about this, Veronica? He asked, his voice low and rumbling like an idling engine. Selling your family home to the Iron Vipers. We aren't exactly the homeowners association type. I am counting on that, I said, sipping my tea. The price is $500,000. Cash. As is. Immediate possession, as of Saturday at 6 p.m. Sledge unlatched the briefcase and cracked it open just enough for me to see the stacks of banded $100 bills. It was dirty money, likely from their auto body shops and other less than IRS compliant ventures. But green is green. The money is there, he grunted. But I need to know about the condition. You said on the phone the floors might be missing. They are, I smiled. My son and his girlfriend have kindly started the demolition for you. They ripped out the kitchen, the dining room walls, and the carpeting. It is essentially a shell. Perfect for a clubhouse or a chop shop, whatever you boys do. Sledge laughed, a short bark of amusement. You saved us the demo costs. I appreciate that. And the tenants. Squatters, I corrected him. My son Leo and his girlfriend Jade. They believe they are renovating the house for themselves. They believe I am moving to a nursing home on Saturday. They will be holding a large party on Saturday night to celebrate their new ownership. Sledge raised a thick eyebrow. A party, so we're crashing. Think of it as a housewarming, I said. They are very difficult people, Sledge. They have dug in. They will claim they own the place. They will scream. They might call the police, though I doubt it, given the illegal sublet scams they run. We handle difficult people, Sledge said, cracking his knuckles. And the police don't come to our parties anymore. We have an understanding. I reached into my purse and pulled out the quitclaim deed. I had notarized it myself earlier that day using my old stamp, a perk of maintaining my license. Sign here, I said, sliding the paper across the table. This transfers the title to your LLC. But Sledge, this needs to be recorded immediately. If the title search doesn't show your name by Saturday night, the police might side with my son. Sledge signed with a pen that looked like a toothpick in his massive hand. He slid the deed into his vest. Don't worry about the paperwork, V, he grinned. My cousin Vinny works the desk at the county clerk's office. He owes me money. I'll walk it in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. By noon Friday, that house is legally Viper territory. Excellent, I said, placing my hand on the briefcase. One last thing. My husband's rose bushes in the backyard. The hybrids. Yeah. Don't park the bikes on them. You got it, boss. I walked out of the diner with $500,000 in cash, heavy in my hand. I drove to the bank's night deposit box 2 towns over, a private vault I accessed with a key, and deposited the cash. Then I drove back to the house that was no longer mine. When I walked in, the dust was even worse. Jade was standing on a ladder in the living room, trying to hang a disco ball from the exposed ceiling joists. Veronica, she shouted over the music. Look, it's giving industrial chic, right? We're pivoting the brand. Rustic luxury. It's very open, I said, stepping over a pile of shattered drywall. We invited everyone for Saturday, Jade announced, climbing down. Like everyone, my followers, Leo's frat brothers, my mom's tarot circle. It's going to be the launch of the century. The estate by Jade. That sounds loud, I said. Oh, you won't be here, she chirped. We're driving you to the meadows at noon. You'll be settled in with your Jell-O long before the DJ starts. Right, I said, the DJ. I looked at Leo. He was slumped in the corner staring at his phone. He looked gray. Everything okay, Leo the first asked. He looked up startled. Huh? Oh yeah, just. The credit card company called. They put a hold on the card because of the marble order. I had to transfer the last of my 401k to clear it. He had drained his retirement for a house he didn't own. A pang of maternal instinct flickered in my chest, but then I looked at the way Jade snapped her fingers at him. Leo, get me a water. I'm parched. And I watched him jump to obey her. The instinct died. He had made his choice. I'm going to finish packing, I said. Friday passed in a blur of construction noise and manic energy. Jade and Leo spent another $10,000 on rented furniture, a catered taco bar, and a custom neon sign that said the Vance Estate. They worked until 3 a.m. desperate to make the gutted shell look like a trendy loft. I slept soundly in the guest room, my bags packed by the door. Saturday morning arrived with a bright, cruel sun. The house smelled of sawdust and desperation. Okay, Mom. Jade burst into my room at 10 a.m. She was wearing a girl boss t-shirt. Time to go. The movers are downstairs to take your boxes to the facility, and we need this room for the coat check. Coat check, I repeated. Of course. I walked downstairs. Leo was waiting by the door holding my car keys. He wouldn't look at me. I'll drive you, Mom, he mumbled. It's a long drive to Vermont. Actually, I said, pausing in the foyer where my antique table used to be. I decided to take an Uber. I don't want to inconvenience you on your big day. Are you sure? Leo asked, looking relieved. Positive. I just want to say goodbye. I looked at the walls they had stripped. I looked at the floors they had ruined. I looked at my son, who was vibrating with anxiety, and my daughter-in-law, who was practically glowing with greed. You two have done so much with the place, I said. I hope you get exactly what you deserve. Thanks, Veronica, Jade beamed. Don't worry. We'll take good care of your legacy. The Uber honked outside. I picked up my purse. I didn't hug them. I walked out the door, down the path, and got into the car. Where to? The driver asked. The parking lot across the street, I said. And then, wait. Yes, I'm paying you by the hour. I want to watch the show. I had the driver park behind a row of hedges in the neighbor's driveway. Mrs. Higgins was in Florida, and she hated Jade almost as much as I did. I had a perfect view of the house. I waited. The sun went down. The party guests started to arrive. From the shadowed safety of Mrs. Higgins' driveway, hidden behind a row of overgrown arborvitae, I watched the destruction of my reputation and the birth of my revenge. It was 8 p.m. and the party was in full swing. Jade had outdone herself in the worst way possible. She had hired a valet service for a driveway that could barely fit 4 cars, creating a traffic jam that stretched down Oak Street. Colored spotlights bathed the gutted shell of my colonial in garish pink and purple hues, making the exposed studs inside look less like a construction site and more like a derelict nightclub. The bass from the DJ booth, set up right where my dining room table used to be, was so loud it rattled the fillings in my teeth, even from across the street. I sat in the back of the black town car, sipping a bottle of water, checking the time on my phone. 8:15 p.m. Sledge was late. Through the large bay window, which Jade had stripped of its curtains to let the energy flow, I could see the guests. They were a collection of Scarsdale's most desperate social climbers and Jade's motley crew of internet friends. I saw women in sequin dresses, tripping over construction debris. I saw men in skinny suits, leaning against walls that hadn't been painted yet. I saw a taco truck parked on my front lawn, right on top of the sprinkler system heads I had paid $3,000 to install last summer. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my bank app. Transaction alert. $4,500. Elite Valet Services. Overdraft protection activated. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Leo had burned through the last of his liquidity. They were partying on fumes. "You want me to drive around the block, ma'am?" the driver asked, eyeing the chaotic street. "This looks like a riot." "No," I said calmly. "Keep the engine running. The main act hasn't arrived yet." Inside the house, I could see Jade holding court. She was standing on a crate in the middle of the living room, shouting into a microphone, waving a glass of champagne. She looked manic. Leo was standing next to her looking terrified, forcing a smile that looked like a grimace. He was holding Buster the bulldog, who was wearing a tuxedo vest. It was pathetic. It was a circus. And then, I felt it. It started as a vibration in the floor of the car, a low guttural thrumming that grew steadily louder, drowning out the terrible EDM music coming from the house. The valet drivers paused, looking down the street. The guests on the front lawn stopped taking selfies and turned their heads. The roar became deafening. Around the corner of Elm and Oak came a phalanx of chrome and black leather. It was beautiful. Sledge was in the lead, riding a custom chopper with handlebars that reached his shoulders. Behind him rode 35 members of the Iron Vipers Motorcycle Club. They weren't riding fast. They were riding with the slow, terrifying purpose of an army that knows it has already won. The sound of 36 V-twin engines echoing off the suburban houses was apocalyptic. They turned into my driveway. The valets scattered like pigeons. The taco truck driver frantically tried to close his serving window. Sledge didn't stop at the valet stand. He rode his bike right up the slate path, over the flower beds, and stopped 2 inches from the front door. The rest of the Vipers filled the driveway, the lawn, and the street, effectively blockading the entire property. The music inside the house cut out. The silence that followed was sudden and violent. I leaned forward in my seat. "Okay," I whispered, "showtime." Jade came storming out the front door, stumbling slightly in her heels. She looked furious. She evidently thought this was a noise complaint or uninvited guests. She marched right up to Sledge, who was kicking down his kickstand with a heavy metallic clank. "Excuse me," Jade shrieked, her voice shrill in the sudden quiet. "This is a private event. You can't park those noisy things here. We have influencers inside." Sledge stood up. He was 6'5". He loomed over her like a skyscraper. He took off his helmet slowly, revealing a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. "Private event," Sledge rumbled. "That's funny. Because usually when I throw a party at my house, I invite my friends. Your house, Jade laughed. A nervous, incredulous sound. This is the Vance estate. I am Jade Vance. And unless you're the strippers I didn't hire, you need to leave before I call the police. Stripper Sledge chuckled. He turned to the other Vipers. You hear that, boys? She thinks we're the entertainment. A ripple of laughter went through the biker gang. It wasn't friendly laughter. Leo came running out, holding the dog. He looked at the bikers, looked at Sledge, and turned the color of old oatmeal. Jade, Leo hissed. Come inside. Let's just call the cops. I'm handling this, Leo, Jade snapped. She poked Sledge in the chest with a manicured finger. Get off my property. Sledge looked down at her finger. Then he reached into his leather vest. He didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a folded document with a blue legal cover. Your property, Sledge asked. That's weird. Because according to this deed, recorded at the county clerk's office as of yesterday afternoon, this property belongs to Viper Automotive Holdings, LLC. He held the paper up. Even from across the street, I could see my signature at the bottom. Jade froze. She squinted at the paper. What? What is that? It's the deed, sweetheart, Sledge said. Veronica sold the place. Cash deal. Quick close. We own the dirt, the walls, and that ugly taco truck parked on my grass. Sold. Jade's voice cracked. She can't sell it. She's incompetent. She's in a home. She seemed pretty competent when she counted the cash, Sledge said. Now I'm gonna give you and your sparkly friends exactly 10 minutes to vacate the premises. After that, we lock the doors. Whatever is inside becomes property of the club. No, Jade screamed. This is a scam. Leo, do something. Tell him. Leo stepped forward, trembling. Sir, my mother. She's not well. This transaction is invalid. We have power of attorney. Or we will. Soon. I don't care what you have soon, Sledge said, stepping closer to Leo. I care what I have now. And what I have now is the title. You're trespassing. Sledge turned to his men. Clear the house, he commanded. When 35 bikers decide to enter a house, they don't knock and they don't wipe their feet. They float into my foyer like a tide of black leather and denim, parting the sea of influencers with terrified efficiency. I watched from the car window as the launch party disintegrated in real time. It was a stampede of sequins and stilettos. Guests who had been sipping champagne seconds ago were now hurdling the hedge to get to their cars. The valet stand was abandoned. The valets had wisely decided that minimum wage wasn't worth negotiating with the Iron Vipers. Jade was still screaming on the front lawn, but her voice was getting thinner, drowned out by the chaos. She tried to block the front door with her body, a tiny figure in a white dress, against a wall of bearded men. Sledge didn't even push her. He just walked around her, stepping over the threshold as if he owned the place, which legally speaking he did. Inside, through the large bay window, I could see the transformation. The bikers weren't smashing things. They were simply occupying the space. One large man picked up a tray of gourmet shrimp tacos, inspected one, and ate it in a single bite. Another unplugged the DJ's laptop and threw it onto the couch, plugging his phone into the sound system instead. A moment later, AC/DC began to blare from the speakers, replacing the thumping techno. The Vipers were making themselves at home. Leo was running in circles on the lawn, clutching Buster the bulldog. He looked like a man whose brain had simply stopped processing input. He ran to the window, looked inside, ran back to Jade, and then ran toward his BMW, only to realize it was blocked in by 5 Harleys. Leo, Jade shrieked, grabbing his arm. Call the police. They're stealing our house. They're eating the catering. I saw Leo pull out his phone. He dialed 911. I watched his face as he spoke. I could imagine the conversation. Yes, there are bikers in my house. No, I don't have the deed. Well, my mother has it. No, she's not here. Yes, the man has a piece of paper. He lowered the phone slowly. The police in Scarsdale know Sledge. They also know civil property disputes. Without a court order or immediate violence, they weren't going to storm a private residence that the occupants had a legal deed for. Sledge walked back out onto the porch. He held a bottle of the expensive champagne Jade had bought. He took a swig and burped. 7 minutes left. Sledge announced to the weeping couple on the lawn, "You might want to grab your purse, sweetheart, and tell your mom to wake up. We found her sleeping in the pantry. Sheila." I had forgotten about Sheila. A moment later, 2 bikers escorted a disheveled Sheila out the front door. She was clutching a bag of my frozen shrimp and looked like she had been abducted by aliens. "This is insane," Jade screamed, stomping her foot. "We spent $40,000 on this renovation. We ripped out the walls. We bought the marble. You can't just take it." Sledge walked down the steps, looming over her. He smiled, and it was a terrifying sight. "And we appreciate that," Sledge rumbled. "Me and the boys were looking for an open-concept clubhouse. You saved us a week of demolition work. That cloud paint isn't really our style, but we'll paint it black by Monday." "My money," Jade whispered, the reality finally piercing her narcissism. "I put it on my credit cards, the investors, the brand." "Consider it a donation to the club," Sledge said. "Time's up. Lock it down, boys." The heavy oak front door, the one I had hung wreaths on for 30 Christmases, slammed shut. I heard the deadbolt click. It was a final definitive sound. Jade and Leo stood alone on the dark lawn. The spotlights had been turned off. The taco truck reversed frantically over the curb and sped away. The guests were gone. They were left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. A terrified bulldog and $40,000 of debt sunk into a house that now belonged to a motorcycle gang. My phone rang. It was Leo. I looked at the screen. I let it ring twice. Then I answered, putting it on speaker so the driver could hear. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice calm and sweet. "Mom," Leo was sobbing. He sounded like he was 5 years old. "Mom, you have to help us. It's a nightmare. These bikers, they kicked us out. They say you sold the house. Tell them it's a mistake. Tell them you're confused." "Confused?" I asked, looking at my perfectly manicured nails. "I don't think so, Leo. I remember the transaction quite clearly. Thursday night. Diner on 4th. Cash deal." There was a silence on the line so profound, it felt like a vacuum. You sold it," Leo whispered. But the renovations, the marble, the open concept. We paid for all of that." "I know," I said. "And I want to thank you for that, Leo." Sledge was worried the place needed too much work. But when I told him you were paying for the demolition and the materials, he was very happy to close the deal. You really increased the property value for him. You knew, Jade's voice screamed from the background. She must have snatched the phone. "You witch. You knew we were spending our money. You let us do it." "I let you do exactly what you wanted, Jade," I said, my voice turning to ice. "You wanted to take over. You wanted to manage the estate. You wanted to make the house yours. Well, you certainly made your mark. I hope the credit card points were worth it." "We're homeless," Jade shrieked. "We gave up the apartment. We have nowhere to go." "I hear the Meadows in Vermont has vacancies," I said. "Although I hear the Jell-O is terrible." "Mom," Leo broke in, his voice trembling. "Please, where are you? We need to come see you. We can fix this." "I'm watching you," Leo the first said softly. He spun around on the lawn, looking wildly at the street. His eyes locked onto the black town car, parked behind the hedge. "I'm leaving now," I said. "Don't try to find me. I have the cash, I have my jewelry, and I have my dignity. You have a maxed out credit card and a very angry wife. Good luck with the transition. I hung up. Drive, I told the driver. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time. Leo was running toward the car waving his arms, growing smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror, until he was just a speck in the dark. I settled back into the leather seat. I opened my banking app again. The deposit had cleared. $500,000, plus the $40,000 in free demolition work they had gifted me. I wasn't just liquid, I was free. They say that living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Living well while watching your enemies drown in the debt they created trying to destroy you. That is the best revenge. It has been 6 months since I watched the Iron Vipers claim the Vance estate. I am currently sitting on the terrace of a penthouse apartment in Charleston, South Carolina. The air smells of jasmine and salt water, not sawdust and vape smoke. I chose Charleston because the architecture is beautiful and the food is excellent, and it is 800 miles away from Scarsdale. I spent the first month in a hotel, letting the dust settle. During that time, I hired a private investigator, a former colleague named Marcus, to keep tabs on the transition. I didn't want to talk to Leo or Jade, but I certainly wanted to know how their brand launch was going. Marcus's reports were better than any soap opera. According to the dossier on my iPad, the fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The night of the party, Leo and Jade slept in their car. The next morning, they tried to go back to the house to retrieve their personal items. Sledge met them at the door. He told them that anything left on the property after the transfer of title was considered abandoned property. He did, however, return Buster the bulldog. Apparently, the Vipers have a strict policy: no dogs that drool on the leather. Jade tried to sue. She found a lawyer who was willing to listen to her story about how she had equitable interest in the property because she had bought a disco ball. The lawyer took a $5,000 retainer and looked at the deed Sledge held. He looked at the lack of any written contract between me and Jade and told her to save her money. She didn't have any money to save. That was the most satisfying part of the forensic audit. The $40,000 they had sunk into the house, the demolition, the cloud paint, the non-refundable deposit on the Italian Calicata gold marble was gone. It was a sunk cost in a property they never owned. The credit card companies were not sympathetic to the "but my mother-in-law tricked me" defense. Leo's credit score is currently in the low 400s. He is working double shifts at a car rental agency near the airport to pay off the minimums. He lives in a basement studio apartment that he shares with 2 roommates. And Jade, the brand didn't survive the scandal. It turns out that getting kicked out of your own launch party by a biker gang isn't the luxury aesthetic her followers were looking for. She lost 10,000 followers overnight. Then she lost Leo. They broke up 3 weeks after the eviction. According to Marcus's report, the argument started over whose fault it was that they ordered the marble. Jade screamed that Leo should have checked the deed. Leo screamed that Jade should have checked her ego. She moved back in with Sheila. I imagine the crystals are very crowded in that apartment. I took a sip of my iced tea, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sledge. He sends me updates occasionally. He feels we have a bond. Attachment photo. I opened it. It was a picture of my old living room. The walls were painted matte black. A pool table stood where my Persian rug used to be. A neon sign on the wall, one they had brought themselves, Red Viper's Den. And in the corner, sitting on a black leather recliner, was one of the bikers reading a book. It was one of my books, a vintage copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Text: thanks for the library, V. Boys are getting educated. Next round is on us. I smiled. The neighbors, I heard, were absolutely miserable. Mrs. Higgins had tried to call the HO, But the HOA president was terrified of Sledge. The property value of the entire cul-de-sac had dropped by 10%. I considered that a bonus penalty for the neighbors, who had watched Jade raid my house for weeks and never called to warn me. I put the phone down. The sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt since Robert died. I had my sanctuary back. It just looked different than I expected. It wasn't a house with 4 bedrooms and a white carpet. It was a life where no one asked me for money. No one told me I was crazy, and no one moved my furniture. My phone rang. The caller ID said Leo Vance. He called once a week, usually on Fridays, when his paycheck didn't cover his bills. I looked at the screen. I let it ring. I watched the phone vibrate on the glass table. Leo Vance. For the last 6 months, I had ignored him. Silence is a powerful weapon, but eventually, even silence loses its edge. Sometimes to truly finish a story, you have to speak the final line. I picked up the phone. Hello, Leo. There was a ragged intake of breath on the other end. He hadn't expected me to answer. Mom, his voice cracked. Oh my God, Mom, you picked up. I did. Where are you? Please just tell me you're okay. I've been going crazy. I thought maybe you really were sick and wandered off. I'm not sick, Leo. I never was. And I didn't wander off. I drove off. In a very comfortable car. I know, he sniffled. I know. Look, Mom, I'm so sorry. About everything. Jade. She manipulated me. She made me think we were doing the right thing. She said you needed help. Jade didn't sign the work orders, Leo. I said, my voice steady. Jade didn't lie to my face about inspectors. You did. You looked your mother in the eye and tried to convince her she was insane. So you could steal her home. That wasn't Jade. That was you. Silence. Heavy and shameful. I'm broke, Mom, he whispered finally. The truth came out as it always does. I'm drowning. The debt from the renovations. The legal fees. I can't make rent. I was hoping. Maybe. If you have the money from the house. I let out a sigh. It wasn't angry. It was just tired. Leo, do you remember when you were 6 years old? And you broke Mrs. Higgins' window with a baseball? What? Yeah, why? You wanted me to hide you. You wanted me to tell her it was a bird. But I marched you over there, made you apologize, and made you mow her lawn for a month to pay for the glass. Mom, I'm 32. I don't need a lesson. Clearly you do, I said. Because you broke the window again, Leo. Only this time the window was my life. And the price isn't a month of mowing lawns. It's figuring your own way out. So you're just going to leave me here. I'm your son. And I am your mother, which means I love you enough to let you grow up. Finally, I looked out at the lights of the Charleston harbor. The bank of Mom is closed, Leo. Permanently. Do not ask for money again. If you want to call me to tell me about your life, about your job, about books you've read, I will answer. But if you mention money or Jade or that house, I will hang up, and I won't pick up again. He was quiet for a long time. I could hear the hum of the rental car office in the background. Okay, he said, his voice small. Okay, Mom. Goodbye, Leo. I hung up. I didn't block the number this time. I didn't need to. I had drawn the boundary, not with a line in the sand, but with a wall of reinforced steel. I finished my iced tea. I stood up and smoothed my linen trousers. I had a reservation at 8 p.m. at a seafood restaurant downtown. I was meeting a handsome retired architect named Arthur, who knew nothing about my past, except that I had a lovely smile and a ruthless backhand in tennis. As I walked to the elevator, I thought about the house in Scarsdale one last time. I thought about the cloud paint covered in black. I thought about the marble I never bought. I thought about the inspectors Leo had invented to scare me. They had tried to gaslight me. They had tried to make me doubt my own reality. They had tried to paint me as a confused, helpless old woman. But they forgot one thing. I spent 30 years finding the hidden variables in broken equations. I don't get confused. I get even. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. The doors closed, shutting out the world, shutting out the past. I checked my reflection in the brass panel. I didn't see a victim. I didn't see a widow. I saw Veronica, and she looked expensive. Oh. Well, ladies, how is that for a renovation? I have to say, there is something poetic about a biker gang enjoying an open-concept living room, funded by a greedy daughter-in-law. Veronica taught us a valuable lesson today. When people try to tell you that you're past your prime or confused, they're usually trying to take something from you. Don't let them. Trust your gut. Trust your memory. And if all else fails, trust a biker named Sledge. Thank you for tuning in to the Family Shock channel. If this story made you smile or check your own deed, please hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, if you had to sell your house to spite an enemy, who would you sell it to? A circus? A tuba school? Let me know, I'll be reading. Until next time.